but if they wouldn't come back, you're welcome to sit if you want, but you don't have to. I always prefer standing over sitting, and we all sit long enough. All right, you may be seated then, and welcome back. Then you're still under oath. Make sure you move up to the microphone, please. Thank you. Mr. D'Angelo?
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Friday, I'm going to go back a little bit. I'm going to start back. You said your parents got divorced in what year?
I believe it was 1987.
1987. Do you know when? You also indicated that you believe that your mom started dating Marv prior to your parents' divorce. Do you know what year that was?
I'm not sure. My dad just told me that he suspected they were dating because Marv had left some flowers on her vehicle or something. They worked at the same bus company.
And you indicated, you testified that you noticed certain things changed about your mom when Marv started coming around. Is that correct?
I don't know if things changed about my mom. It was just their relationship it was evident that they were seeing one another, but she just kept saying they were friends.
Maybe I should be a little more clear. You indicated that she was a little bit more secretive about her relationship with Marv at the beginning?
Secretive to the point where I would ask her if they were in a relationship and she would just say they were friends.
Okay. So the beginning of Marv's relationship is very similar to the beginning of her relationship with Jim, where she was kind of secretive about it. You would say that's about the same?
I guess so.
Okay. And when your mom started dating Marv, you were about 15, so your resources to kind of investigate were limited at that point, correct?
Yes.
But you started investigating your mom's relationship with Jim pretty quickly. Is that true?
Yes, I mean, as far as when I was 15, I was still skeptical of things. I guess I'm always been inquisitive. I remember them remodeling the kitchen, and I was kind of spying on them through the kitchen window. And again, this was not conduct of friendship.
And that was how she was with Marv at that time, correct? Okay. And so then moving forward, your mom and Marv, did they go on trips when he was healthy?
Yeah, they would. I think they went out to, like, I don't know, out west, the Grand Canyon or something like that. They would on occasion, yes.
Okay.
Can I interrupt? Does someone have like a cell phone on, or is there some feedback from some sound coming out of the gallery?
I hear something too, yeah.
Sure. All right, I apologize, Mr. D'Angelo, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm just going to go back a little bit here. Sorry for the interruption. So when Marv was healthy, your mom and Marv would go on trips. You mentioned the Grand Canyon. Did they do any other kind of major trips?
No, I mean, they would, and that was many years ago. Their main thing was to go to the casino. And if they did go out west for a trip, I mean, I can maybe think of that one time, they would stay in very low-end hotels.
Sure. When your mom was obviously more working, she had less time on her hands as she got older. You mentioned she wanted to do more adventurous stuff, but Marv had an inability to do so because of his health, correct?
Correct.
When does Marv's health start to when did it start to deteriorate?
I would say probably the last 5 years or so.
The last 5 years, okay. So he passed in 2012, so basically from 2007 to 2012, his health deteriorated and they had less ability to do trips and things.
Correct, because I think she would have rather had him go with her to Cancun than me, you know, if he would have been able to.
So your mom still went on trips without Marv?
Well, we went to Cancun because she won the trip through her work. So
Okay.
It was a work incentive thing that she won, and she took me with her. I'm sure that she would have rather taken Marv.
And when you guys went to Cancun, I know she won the trip there, but did your mom pay for you to be with her and do the activities and things?
No, I paid myself.
Okay. And then you mentioned the trips to Georgia. Did you guys share that expense?
Yes, I've always paid everything. My mom is very money conscious. She's loaned me money over the years. She charges me 6% interest.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned that your brother Jason lived with your mother, correct?
Correct.
When did he start living with your mother and Marv?
He lived with my mom much of his adult life. He was with her more than not. I don't know exactly.
Okay. And as far as then Jason, did Jason work? Did he contribute to the house, or was he more dependent on your mom for his daily living expenses?
He was an over-the-road truck driver.
How long was he an over-road truck driver?
I'm not sure. I'm not that close with my brother.
Okay. So do you know whether or not he was contributing like rent towards your mom's house?
I would not know.
Okay. So you don't know what the financial relationship between your brother and your mom was?
I do not know.
Okay. And then, so the first time that you were aware of your mom having contact with Jim Prokopovitz, I think you said it was a phone call May 19th, 2013?
Correct.
You looked at through her other phone records prior to that?
That was the first one that I could find in her phone records.
Okay. So when you looked at your mom's phone records, did you see any phone calls to Jim Prokopovitz in April?
So May 19th was the first phone call.
Okay. And if I heard your testimony correctly, you got the phone records because your brother and your mom shared a phone line, and so he gave you access to the phone?
Correct.
Was this the first time you ever started looking through your mom's phone records?
Yes.
And you also got into her credit card records, is that right? How did you do that?
I believe that she had a document on her desk that had passwords.
So you found her passwords and you started looking at her credit cards as well?
Correct.
This, the state had you look at Exhibit 88. Can I bring this, can I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Friday, when I handed you was marked as Exhibit 88. That was your documentation of your mom's credit card receipts, correct?
Correct.
The June 2013 day, the one on the very top, was that the first time that you saw a credit card receipt for the Wittenberg Best Western?
The June 29th was the first Best Western.
Okay.
June 22nd was the restaurant.
Okay. So June 22nd was the first time you saw the credit card used at that Wittenberg restaurant location.
Correct,
June 29th was the first time you saw the Best Western pop up.
correct.
Did you look at her credit card records prior to June?
Yes,
And there was no credit card charges in May,
correct,
and there was no credit card charges in April.
correct.
So based on your own research, the first time that your mom's credit card would show that they met up was in the end of June.
Yes, after when she had called me June 28th and said about meeting up with him, and then she, we talked on that Sunday, so clearly the 29th was the first time. But it also, she had told me that she had spent the night in Wittenberg the weekend prior, and that's not listed.
And all this researching of her credit card, her telephone, came up because she was on the phone with a gentleman that you found odd.
No, because I found out that I guess odd, because his wife was missing and I was concerned around that.
When your mom was having these phone conversations with the gentleman at that time, you didn't know who it was. Did she seem happy?
She seemed giddy, yes.
You mentioned something like she seemed like she was like a 13-year-old girl in a first-time relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Is that yes?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
I understand that
Yep.
is they like to have you on the record to speak out. So her longtime significant other was sick for 5 years. He passes. She finds somebody new and she seems happy, and that raised concerns to you?
No, her behavior and her not wanting to disclose to me and not being forthright with me raised concern.
But she wasn't forthright with you about Marv in the beginning, so why would you suspect that a new relationship would be any different?
Because I'm now 41 years old, and at that time I was 15.
You also mentioned, though, that your mom was a very proud person and kind of a private person, true?
Yes,
And she concerned about appearances, is that right?
correct.
Was she concerned about appearances also with you and your brother?
I suppose so.
So it's not, so her behavior with regards to not telling you about this new relationship was somewhat about perception and appearances, true?
Well, it was very odd in the fact that she called me to even tell me about it at all to begin with. So if she didn't want me to know and was concerned about appearances, why call me on June 28th to say that she ran into this guy and what should she do? And when I'm supportive of it, why not come out and be forthcoming with what's going on?
But ultimately, we don't know why she wasn't forthcoming, true?
Right.
And we don't know exactly what was going on in her mind as to why she said that she met a gentleman at a casino, correct?
Right, because she lied constantly.
But you confront her just several months into this relationship, and you're confronting her about information that you found about on her cell phone, correct?
Right.
So was she aware that you were looking at her cell phone records?
At that point, she was, and she denied it.
But she found out that you looked at her cell phone records, correct?
Yeah, and she never expressed frustration with me in looking at her, she never confronted me and said, why are you looking at my records? It's none of your business. It was more continuing her lie that this didn't happen, even though I had proof.
Well, at some point, she did kind of confront you and cut you off, correct? Like you said, you stopped talking to her in October of 2013, right?
If you asked her about it, she would have said that it was I who cut her off.
Okay, but either way, your relationship with your mother changed significantly in October of 2013 when you stopped talking.
Correct.
Are you saying that she tried to reach out to you after October 2013 and you
Yep.
didn't respond?
Every birthday and Christmas, she would send me what I called an empty email. It would say, Merry Christmas in the subject line and nothing in the body. It would say happy birthday in the subject line, nothing in the body.
Did you,
The last one I received was December of 2018, at which time I replied to her and said, if you would like to have a conversation full of sentences and word structure, I am all open for that, but please do not play these games. And her response was, this is not game playing, that she didn't know if she should reach out because she didn't know if I would respond. And there was nothing after that.
so the emails that she sent you from 2013 to 2018, did you ever respond to her emails other than that one in 2018?
I did not respond to the previous emails, no.
And you were asked about, you found out information that your mom was looking at property in Kentucky, is that right?
Correct.
How old was your mom in 2013?
How what?
How old was your mom in 2013?
Born in 52 to 2013.
So
That was 8 years. That was 8 years ago. I'm 48, so that would have been 40. So she would have been 60.
she was 60 years old, retired at that point?
She had lost her job, so she never went back to work after that.
But she saved up her money, she had retirement. Did she ever talk about wanting to move to a warmer climate in her late years?
Never. And actually, during one of our flights, I'm guessing it was the first one because the second one in September was not so great. But in August of 2013, we were on a plane and we were talking to some other members, people in front of us, and they were talking about how they were going to visit their children and they live states away. And my mom told me that she could not imagine ever living that far away from her children and grandchildren.
How often did your mom have conversations with your children after October of 2013?
I cannot answer that.
Do you know if she had any contact with them?
I don't have contact with my daughter, so I can't answer for her. And I think she's reached out to my son. I don't know if he's responded or not.
Do you have much contact with your son as well?
Yes, I do have contact with him. Her relationship with my kids, although, while they were close younger years, Marv really impacted the relationship. He was very difficult. My kids, when they were young especially, didn't like to go over there.
You mentioned that Marv was difficult, and he was even more difficult towards the end with his health deteriorating?
He was more difficult for my mom, but for me, that's when I guess I developed more of a soft spot. I remember when I first went to school for medical assistant, I was 19 years old, and I gave the commencement address, and my mom shared with me that Marv was proud. He would have been proud to call me his daughter. So that meant something, and he would often, they did what we called dumpster diving. They'd go to the dump and find furniture, and he'd, make it up. And so I now have some pieces that he had made that I hold very dear. But over the years, he could be difficult.
So your relationship with Marv improved because of his health deteriorating, you being in the health profession. There was that common interest of his health and you feeling the need to help him because of your background in health.
No, I think it was more because I'm just a compassionate person, and when someone's not doing well, and he was just more vulnerable and maybe not as, he just wasn't as belligerent, he was easier to deal with. He wasn't sitting in the driveway honking the horn for her to leave, even though she'd ignore it anyway, but it was hard for us to ignore it.
Now, you said that the conversations your mom was having over the phone that you overheard, she said the term okie dokie, and that annoyed you. Why did it annoy you so much?
Because it was constant. Okie dokie, constant.
Did your mom take on certain statements that Marv used to say that was similar?
Not that I can ever recall.
Okay. Now, when did you reach out to Detective Ehrenstein with regards to your mom dating Jim?
I believe it was beginning of September.
Okay. And after you spoke with Detective Ehrenstein, did you reach out to any of Victoria Prokopovitz's daughters?
I believe I initially reached out on the Facebook page, sending my condolences. I was trying to be very cautious with things. Again, I had no idea initially what was going on. You know, was Jim and Vicky separated? You know, were they planning on divorce? Where did this all go? I didn't know if I was being overly cautious or if there was something going on. So initially, I just sent my condolences, and then at some point we started conversing, and you know, I was trying to delicately just feel out, is there anything I should be worried about?
Do you know approximately when that communication between you and the daughters of Victoria Prokopovic started?
Maybe, it was later in the year, so I don't know if it was October, November of 2013.
Still in 2013, though?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and then was this after you and your mom kind of separated your relationship, I guess, for lack of better terms?
Yes.
And so the information that you were receiving about Vicky's disappearance was mostly related to you through Marcia Lawrence?
Through Marcia, or what I would see in articles or whatnot.
Now, you said that your mom's spending was frugal, but other than what you got into her records for, did you know what your mom's spending habits were prior to that?
Yes,
And how did you know that?
because we were close. I mean, I just knew what she was willing to spend money on and what she wasn't. Her animals meant everything to her. But, you know, she was just always very strict with her money. If her and Marv went out to dinner, they would split it right down to the, you know, they would, number one, share a meal and then split it down to the penny, you know.
Do you know if your mom and Jim's relationship, they used to split the money as well?
I don't know.
And so the hotel, they were staying at a Best Western. That's not the most extravagant hotel in the world, correct?
I guess it's right, but for her to even go to a hotel when she has a home, that's, you know, she didn't go to hotels.
But if she's meeting a new person and she's going through this kind of teenage love phase, I don't know where the better way to call it, but could you see her, you know, spending this type of money because she wants to develop this relationship?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Thank you.
I'll withdraw the question, Your Honor. When your mom would spend her money, you mentioned she loved her animals. Did she spend money at her house for her animals, buying new equipment and items that the animals needed?
She would take them to the vet, or, you know, as far as spending money on the house, you know, she was her and Marv were very handy. My mom was always very handy, so it was more that they would do the work themselves or whatever they wanted to do. You know, they build things and that kind of thing.
Do you know, you said you looked at your mom's records, she was spending money at the hotel and the restaurant. Do you know of how much she was spending at the casino?
That I wouldn't know.
So it wasn't on her credit card for that?
Correct.
And you never got into her bank records to determine if she was taking out money to go to the casino, correct?
Correct.
As far as you know, she might just be meeting this gentleman in Wittenberg and they're just staying at the hotel and going to dinner.
That could be.
Okay. When you say that your mom's actions were bizarre, are you saying that more as the fact that she, again, is acting more like this teenage love scenario? Is that the bizarre type behavior?
It was just completely not who I've ever seen her be like. Even when her and Marv were together, you know, I could tell that they were clearly an item, but there wasn't this giddiness. It just was never to this extent. I never heard them talking on the phone all the time, or, you know, he was over, but not constantly. It was just, you could just tell that there was more to it.
Marv lived nearby, so he had the ability to come over to your mom's house more often than, say, somebody who lives a couple hours away.
Correct.
It was also brought up by the state with regards to your mom's will being changed. When did you find out that the will was changed?
I think in 2014, I think is when she emailed me saying to get rid of it. I believe it was the beginning of.
Were you upset about that her will got changed?
I was upset that my daughter's not been in my life since she was 14, due to actions of her father and whatnot. My mom always told me, you need to keep trying. You need to keep being in her life, showing her you care. Keep that door open. We went to every cross-country meet, every track meet, even if my daughter gave me these eyes that she hated me. I was upset that I'm confronting my mom about her lies. And just like that, it's done. I'm gonna take you out of my will. I don't care about any, you know, money, that kind of thing. It was I'm confronting her about her lies. I am essentially out of her life.
But your mom still sent you an email. Even if it was an empty email, she did reach out that you didn't respond back, correct?
Yes. But I also, when my grandmother died in 2016, and I went to my grandmother's bedside, as she passed, my mother was the only one who would not come up to me. Her sisters, her brother, she's kept her distance.
Now, your mom and her relationship with Marv, did Marv and your mom have many friends outside of just them two doing things together?
You know, they went and played bingo every week at Hardee's, that kind of thing. Other than that, I can't think of anything right off the top of my head.
Did you ever confront your mom with regards to, strike that. The email in 2018 that you responded back, did you and your mom ever have a conversation after that email went through?
Not directly.
Everything was through a sibling or
Correct.
other family members?
Yes, when she was trying to get me to help her post her bail.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Now, just a couple. Counsel just asked you relative to your mom's animals and how you responded, your mom's animals meant everything to her. Is that right?
Yes,
Did she have many donkeys?
yes.
She had other animals?
She had my daughter's pony from when my daughter was young until it passed away. And then she had like a German Shepherd kind of dog. And then she had a couple little, what I call ankle biters at some point. I don't know. I know one of them ended up getting hit by a car, I think, during all of this. And I don't know what happened with the other, but you know, the little dogs would go with her everywhere normally. It wasn't unlike her to leave the German Shepherd home, of course, but if she went to the casino by my grandmother's house, she'd always take the dogs with her, the little ones.
Does she even refer to her animals as her kids?
Yes,
So that was very important to her.
yes.
With respect to, counsel also asked you about if you were familiar with your mom and asked you some questions about her spending habits. You already testified she was pretty frugal. In fact, is there an incident where she charged you for a drain?
Yeah, she came and helped me fix something on my sink. And she worked at the bank that I bank at. And I was going through, balancing my checkbook, and there was a withdrawal of like $12 and some odd cents. And I called her and asked her what that was, and she said it was the part that she had to get from the hardware store.
So she charged you for it.
Yep.
Now, with respect to, counsel also asked you about if you're looking at your mom's records and doing this investigation based upon the fact that you heard she's just dating someone, wasn't it that she was dating someone whose wife was missing?
Absolutely. And then the lies, or what at the time, what I was finding was the secrecy around it that I felt.
Okay. So it's not just simply she's getting in the relationship. He also asked you if, your wife, or strike that, your mom is happy and you're doing all of this. Did you have safety concerns for your mom based upon
Absolutely.
this? Okay. So the reason that you were looking into the relationship that your mom had with Jim and the concerns that you had were resulting over the fact that his wife was missing.
Absolutely.
So lastly, when counsel right away asked you if, comparatively speaking, the relationship with Marv, that was also secretive. So would you say that's the same? Did Marv have a missing spouse at the time that your mom got involved with him?
No,
So it was different.
absolutely.
I have nothing further.
Recross?
Friday, you said you had concerns about your mom because Jim, his wife, was missing. Did you ever meet with Jim, talk with Jim?
No,
You never got to know him or his personality.
no,
So these concerns you have were not fully fettered out because you never actually had a conversation or relationship with Jim to determine what kind of person he really was.
no. My concerns were based on the fact that she continued to lie to me even when I confronted her with proof of, that the lies just continued.
So the concern was your mother's lying, not necessarily about her safety.
No, it was about her safety, and then I couldn't figure out why she would continue to lie about things.
If you're so concerned about your mother's safety, why did you guys end your relationship?
Because she continued to lie to me. And then she also started telling people that I just didn't want her to be happy and not to believe anything that I said if I voiced my concerns.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. Jurors, you can stand up and stretch. I've been authorized to tell you that Judge Hinkfist is on the mend. He won't be able to bear any weight for 6 weeks. The pain is still there, but he's feeling a lot better.
At this time, the state will call Darlene Nichols to the stand.
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter now before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. Good afternoon. Make sure you speak into the microphone and pull your chair up. And then, so would you tell us your name and then spell your name for us?
Darlene A. Ingalls, DARLENE INGALLS.
Thank you very much. You may examine your witness.
Darlene, what is your date of birth?
9/28/47.
How old are you?
73.
Okay. And are you employed?
Yes.
And I don't need to ask where you work, but what do you do?
Cook and a caregiver.
Okay. Okay. And is that at a facility?
Yes.
Okay. Now, specifically, do you have any biological children?
Yes.
Who are they?
James William Prokopovitz Jr. and Lisa Marie Masty.
And who is the children's father?
James Malin Prokopovitz.
And were you married to James?
Yes.
And do you recall when you were married to him?
1966.
And at some point, did that marriage terminate?
Yes.
And do you know when that happened, what year?
84 or 85, I'm not sure what year.
Okay. So you would have been married to him just about or almost for 20 years?
Yes.
Now, with respect to you identifying that you had been married to James, where did you live during the marriage, or did that change?
Pulaski and the surrounding area,
Okay.
out in the country and in town.
Okay. And at the time that you were married to James, did James have a nickname that people knew him by?
Curly.
And during your marriage, was Curly employed?
Yes.
Where did he work?
He worked at the White Elevator and McKeefrey's in the end.
Okay. And with respect to his employment then, you indicate towards the end of your marriage he was employed at McKeefrey's?
Yes.
Do you know what he did there at McKeefrey's?
Drove truck, I guess.
Okay. And during the course of your marriage, you indicate that you were living out in the Pulaski area?
Pardon me?
You indicated that while you were married to Jim that you lived out in the Pulaski area?
Yes.
Through those years, were your children living in your household as well?
Yes.
And through those years and during the years of your marriage, was there ever any abuse that was occurring in the household?
Yes.
Who was it occurring to?
I was.
And who is the person that caused the abuse to you?
Jim,
With
my
reg-
husband.
With regard to that, were there ever instances of some physical abuse towards you?
Yes.
And what did those involve?
Grabbing by the arms and leaving marks and choking.
And when you're saying choking, did he use his hands to do that?
Yes.
Now, were there times that you were injured by James that there were injuries that weren't visible?
They weren't visible if you covered them up.
And were there, back then, and so now we're talking about a time frame between the 60s and the 80s, was there the resources there are today for women?
No.
Okay. And what do you mean by that? Back then, did people report domestic violence?
People didn't report it. You didn't talk about it. You lived in a small town. Everybody knew everything, so you didn't really talk about it.
Were you able to wear clothing and things that people wouldn't know about it?
Yes.
And was disclosing something like that also felt to be embarrassing?
Yes.
Were those some of the reasons, or were you telling people about what was going on in your own home?
I didn't hear you.
Were you telling others about what
No.
he was doing to
No.
you? Besides, strike that, during the times that this abuse had occurred, was Curly under the influence of alcohol?
Most of the time, yes.
Living with him, were you familiar with his drinking habits?
Yes.
Did he consume alcohol on a daily or weekly basis?
I would say pretty much daily.
Do you remember what he drank?
I believe it was mostly beer.
Were his actions different depending on what he drank?
I don't think so.
And in living with Curly through those years, did you have the opportunity to view him when he would get angry?
Yes.
Was he quick to anger?
Yes.
Was there anything that would make him more quick to anger?
Other than the drinking, no.
So alcohol was a trigger?
I think so, yes.
And through those years, was there ever any control by Curly towards you in the household?
I don't know how to explain control. He worked, I stayed home with the kids till they were older, and then I went to work part-time. I did most of the household chores. I don't think he ever did a dish or washed a load of clothes or didn't go anywhere. We didn't do anything.
Yeah. And when you described abuse and you talked about physical abuse, was there ever any verbal abuse occurring? Or was it just physical?
No, there was verbal abuse too, I'm sure.
Okay. At the time that you were living in the household, was there also an incident that occurred involving a gun?
Yes.
And how did that happen?
I don't know how it started, but it ended up with my daughter and I put in the bathroom with a shotgun against her head as she stood in front of me.
Were there any threats made to either of you?
Yes, he was gonna shoot us.
Did he indicate that?
Yes,
And when you're saying him, who are you talking about?
James.
Now, as you're indicating that some of these instances of abuse had occurred, at some point, did you ever indicate that you might leave him?
Yes,
Did he ever make threats involving that?
yes, he said you never get out the door.
What did he say?
You'd never get out the door.
Did he ever tell you you'd never get out of there alive?
Yes,
Did you relay that to law enforcement?
no,
Do you
No.
remember previously testifying in a hearing involving this case?
pardon me?
Do you remember previously having to testify in a court hearing involving this matter?
Yes,
At that time, if you had testified that the defendant had said you'd never get out alive, do you recall that?
yes, it was more than once it was said to me.
Okay. And these statements and these things that happened, they occurred while you were married to him?
Yes,
As a result of what was occurring in your household and in your marriage with Jim, did you leave Jim?
yes.
What did you leave him with
What did I leave him with?
on the day you left?
I left with the clothes on my back. I just left. I had an opportunity to leave and I left.
At the time that you left, were you afraid of Jim and his actions?
There was always in the back of my mind, I was afraid of what he was going to do because he would be, I mean, he could be nice one minute and the next minute he would blow up and then be physically and emotionally abusive.
It could change quickly?
Yes,
And did you fear for your safety?
yes,
After you left him on that day, have you had any contact with him or spoken to him?
in divorce court.
The person that you just identified as your former husband, Jim, do you see him seated in the courtroom today?
Yes,
Could you briefly just point out where he is?
sitting at the table over there in the middle.
Let the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant, James Prokopovitz.
The record will so indicate.
I have nothing further.
You may cross.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Ingalls, if I heard your testimony correctly, you indicated that you would get injured, but you didn't tell anybody about it, correct?
Nope,
You didn't show any bruises, correct?
nope,
Did you take any pictures?
no,
Did you have a best friend that you confided in?
no,
So the only person besides yourself that would know if these occurred would be Jim, correct?
yes.
Your children didn't see these injuries?
No, I didn't show them to my children.
The incident with the gun that allegedly occurred, when did that occur in your, so you got divorced in 84, 85. When did the gun incident occur? Right before the divorce?
I don't know when exactly it happened. I don't remember the year or the date. I was still living in the house. It wasn't before the divorce. It was before the divorce. We were living together
So after this gun incident, you guys stayed together?
for a period of time. We were still together, yes.
And was that the only time that a gun was ever waved at you?
It wasn't waved, it was pointed.
Do you know if it was loaded?
No, I don't.
What did he do with the gun after the incident?
He went out into the barn with it.
Do you know if he broke it?
I don't know what he did with it.
The incident where he pointed it, how long was that incident occurring? Was this over a longer period of time, within a few minutes? Like, how long did the incident last?
I don't know how long it lasted, longer than I wanted it to.
What was Jim's reaction when he walked away? Did he just turn around and walk away, or what happened?
Yes, he just turned around and walked away.
Did he say anything about it?
I don't remember.
Did you guys discuss it after the fact?
Probably, but I don't remember.
You mentioned Jim's drinking habits. At that time, he was drinking beer. Do you know approximately how many beers he would have at night when he came home?
He drank before he came home.
He drank before he came home. Did he drink when he got home?
Occasionally,
But primarily he drank at a bar prior to getting home?
yes.
So you don't know how many drinks he was actually drinking?
No.
You also mentioned verbal abuse, although you think that there was verbal abuse. Do you know for sure that there was verbal abuse?
There was verbal abuse. There was name calling.
Did you ever respond back to him by name calling?
Occasionally, yes.
So it was arguments you had.
More than arguments. It was a lot of yelling.
You mentioned that you left with the clothes on your back. You had an opportunity. Is that because you left with another man?
I left with another man. That's got nothing to do with why I left.
The last time you had contact with Jim was in divorce court, correct?
As far as I can remember,
Isn't it true that both Lisa and your son both lived with Jim after the divorce, correct?
they stayed there, yes.
They didn't stay with you?
No.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
You were asked by the defense, I'm going to ask about two things. One, he just asked you about the drinking habits of Jim, drinking in a bar. Jim was known to be drinking in bars a lot, wasn't he, during this time?
They stopped mostly every day after work and drank, yes.
And those were the bars in Pulaski?
Yes.
And secondly, the defense just asked you about communications you had with others about what happened to you. Did you receive a telephone call from Victoria Prokopovitz about about Jim?
Yes.
And when did that happen, and what was that about?
It was probably in the late 80s, 88, 89, 90, somewhere around there. And I don't know how she got the phone number. She called and said who it was. And she said, basically, how did you live with this? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And she said, how did you live with him as long as you did? And I said, if there's a problem, maybe you should divorce him, like I did.
And that was the extent of it.
Basically the extent of it. She wanted, I don't know what she was asking me to do. She just wanted to know how I lived. She did bring up the subject of alcohol, but I didn't go into detail in conversation. I didn't know the woman. I had never met her.
Yeah. So that was really the extent of it.
Basically.
I have nothing further.
Ma'am, you said this conversation happened somewhere between 89 and the early 90s, correct?
I'm guessing at the time frame, yes.
And did Miss Brokapovic ever indicate that Jim was physical with her?
She didn't say anything on the phone to me, no.
There was no indication of any abuse from Victoria, correct?
Conversation wasn't that long.
No further questions.
All right, thank you very much. You're excused. Jurors, you can stand up, stretch. Counsel? Thank you. Okay, we call the next witness. Yeah, I just.
So at this time, Your Honor, the state will call Laura Johnson to the stand.
You can come right up between the council table and watch the cord there. You come right up and then right around here, be sworn in. And would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the manner now before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. Then you have to pull real close to the microphone, and I'm going to get your mask over it.
Okay.
Then would you state your name and then spell it for us?
Okay, my name is Laura Johnson. That's LauraJohnson.
Thank you. You may examine your witness.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, do you know the defendant, James Prokopovitz?
Yes,
How do you know him?
he's my brother.
I'd like to direct your attention to 2019. Do you recall that year?
Yes,
At some point during that year, did you have cause to receive or have your brother Jim reach out to you about sending some letters for him?
well, he reached out to me first to make arrangements to get money for his lawyer,
Okay.
and he had called me about it. And then one of the times when he sent a letter, he had asked if I could get a letter to Kathy in a letter he sent me.
Sure.
And then I visited him at the jail, and he asked me again, because I didn't answer back in the letter to tell him anything. And then he asked me when I visited him, excuse me, if I could give a letter to Kathy, and I said, no, that you guys can't communicate back, you're not able to talk to one another.
So around that time, you were aware that the court ordered a no contact provision between Jim and Kathy?
Yes, Kathy had told me that they were on a no contact list between one another.
And when you're talking about Kathy, what was Kathy's last name?
Kathy Friday,
And what was her relationship to your brother?
that was his girlfriend.
Okay. And at the time, Kathy was also ordered to have no contact with Jim?
Yes,
Okay. And previous to this all occurring in 2019, was there a time period where you hadn't had contact with your brother Jim?
where I hadn't had contact,
Yeah.
did you say? Yes, we got back in contact with one another in 2017 when my husband passed away, and he sent a card, and that's how I found out where they lived. None of us in our family did, and it had been, I don't know, maybe 20 years since I had seen him, 30.
Yeah, if you had told law enforcement officers that that card was the first time you heard from Jim in about 30 years?
Yeah, roughly. Other than if I had bumped into him a couple times in our grocery store, that might have been 20 years ago, roughly.
Sure. So you kind of reconnected then in 2017, is what you're saying?
Yes, when he sent the card for my husband's, because my husband passed away.
Okay. And so around the time that you received this request, you were also in contact with Kathy Friday?
Yes, the way I had gotten in contact to her was, well, when they got arrested or got taken into jail, and she had gotten released, and I just called and left a message for her saying, you know, I'm sorry all this happened, and it was just a voice message I left for her because that's what I got on her phone, and she got back in touch with me after she had checked with her lawyer to see if it was okay for her to talk to me, and then so it was just a kind of a general conversation, but then when we called back and talked about the money was after Jim had to try and find a way to get money for a lawyer, and I was the only one he had a phone number for.
And so basically it's your testimony that Jim and Kathy were both reaching out to you to assist them with contacting each other in violation of that court order.
Well, Kathy wasn't doing it. Jim called me to say, can you have Kathy he needed to get the money out for a retainer for the lawyer, and she had access to the savings account and checking account to get it. Nobody else had access to it.
And isn't it true they both asked you to pass messages that they loved each other?
My brother Jim, when we would hang up on a phone call or when I would leave from visiting him, would say, tell Kathy I love her.
Okay. And Kathy asked you to communicate personal things in her life, like the birth of her donkey and other things.
I don't think, she didn't really say, tell Jim this. She would tell me this stuff, and I would pass it on to Jim
Okay.
for it. The only direct thing that she maybe would have said is to say, well, let him know I got the money to the lawyer for the retainer, you know, for when there was something specific that we were trying to get the funds to get him his lawyer.
Okay. And you yourself, you weren't pending on anything with no contact orders, just the two of them were?
Yes, I wasn't on any.
Okay. And these things were just being done at the request of them?
I guess I'm not on.
Jim was asking you to do these things?
Yes, to try and get the money or to tell him that he loved her, and said, let her know to get the oil changed in the truck and have her use it and stuff like that, so it wasn't sitting. So
Okay.
that came from Jimmy asking me to tell her.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
You may cross.
Just briefly, Ms. Johnson, prior to Jim reaching out to you in 2017, There wasn't any bad blood between you and Jim that you didn't have conversations, correct?
Was there bad blood? No. I mean, we just didn't.
Just didn't talk to each other much.
Correct. I mean, yes.
When he reached out in 2017, you guys reconnected.
Well, when he sent the card, we actually didn't physically talk. He sent the card and I sent the thank you back. And when we finally did physically talk to one another, was until that following August. So my husband passed away in October, so it was next August. They were coming through, he and Kathy, to get some stuff at the Pulaski warehouse, some seed, and they called and said they would stop by, because I had put in the note, if you're ever coming through, please stop by. And so they had stopped by. So the first time that we actually had ever physically met Kathy and Jim and I had communicated then would have been August of 2018.
You know your brother to be a kind of a private person?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked, there's a pretty big age difference between us and stuff, so I never, I didn't see him all that much in between, so.
And when Jim was asking you to try to get the money together, you were just trying to help him out, correct?
Right, because they wouldn't give him a public defender, and he had no way to access any money. He couldn't, I happened to write him and put my phone number in the letter, so I was the only person he had available to communicate with.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Lemkool?
I have nothing further.
All right, thank you. You're excused. All right, jurors, and that's going to be our last witness for today. Again, the admonition, do not discuss the case amongst yourself or anyone else. You're only a few days away from deliberations, and then you'll be able to discuss the case amongst yourselves to arrive at a verdict. So you're then excused for the day. We're going to start at 8:30 again tomorrow morning on time. Thank you very much, and have a good night. Could I have counsel again for just a minute?